Hello and welcome. Thank you for downloading today's episode. I am JJ Flazanes, your host. And I'm excited to bring you today's show. It is a technique that you could literally use today. In fact, we're going to use it here live on the show. If you are driving, please don't do it while you're driving. If you want to pull over, it won't take that long. And it actually could provide a lot of assistance for anyone dealing with depression, anxiety, or any negative triggers or traumas that are coming up for you in the moment. So today's show, Tapping Out Depression, is an interview with Naomi Janzen. She's a certified expert clinical EFT practitioner and a certified energy psychology practitioner and a trainer who's been tapping since 2008. She's the author of the forthcoming book, Tapping Out Depression, When You Barely Care Enough to Try, co-creator of the tapping and meditation site One Mind Live, and creator of Remindfulness, a mindfulness app for iPhone that's on top 10 lists from Positive Psychology to Cosmopolitan magazine. A screenwriter for over 25 years before becoming an EFT practitioner, she wrote and co-produced a just-released documentary called The Science of Tapping, which explores a surprising amount of clinical research that's now been done on this emerging technique. Welcome to the show, Naomi.
Hi, JJ. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're the first person I thought of when I realized I have never done a show on EFT. And boy, do I want more people to know about EFT. It's such a powerful tool that I've used. I use it on myself. Sometimes I forget to use it, but I was conducting a meditation and a little bit of a workshop, and I remembered thinking, oh, I want to share this with people. Now, I ran out of time, but that's okay because I'm not an expert in it, but I wanted to pass it on to people, and I thought, well, who can I bring on to talk about it? And of course, you were the perfect person. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I love having opportunities to talk about EFT. It's pretty much my favorite subject since I cleared my depression with it about 12 years ago in a very short amount of time, and became fascinated to know more about how this works and the different things that it can work on for people.
Well, let's talk about how you came into it. And like you just said, you cleared depression. So let's give everybody a background story on what you used EFT to help you with, and then how you started to get inspired to teach it and to build a business around it.
Well, I was a television writer producer, so I couldn't have come from further away than becoming an energy psychology practitioner. But I went through a life event that caused me to experience for the first time real depression. I never had really understood what depression was like until I experienced this. And I tried everything during about a 1.5 year period, and was really surprised at just how exhausting depression is, and how everything I tried helped a little bit for a little while, but the depression came back, the obsessive thinking, and so on. And a friend told me about EFT and sent me this. At the time, it was this free manual. You can still get free resources online, how to do this yourself, and made me promise I would try it. And I did. And I felt an immediate result. And so I kept doing it for about 5 days. I did it for twice a day for about an hour each time. And the perseverance was simply because I was feeling an effect. I had no motivation at that time, because depression takes away your motivation. So it was really driven by how much better I was feeling every time I did it. And at the end of that, my depression was lifted. It's never come back. I've gone through the kinds of typical ups and downs that people go through, but nothing near depression. And I have this tool now so that when I'm not feeling great because something's happened, I've been triggered by something, I just use this tool to go in and take care of it.
So for everyone listening, in case you are currently unaware, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and the other name for it would be tapping. That's a common term used to define EFT. People use it because it does work with energy meridians in your body, and you do actually use your body to tap on it. So let's go into, that's my, very simple take on wanting to make sure people understood what it is. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what it is on a deeper level?
Well, on the simplest level, it's a relaxation technique, and it's been shown scientifically now to reduce the stress hormone cortisol in the body in a way that there is no drug that does, in a very short amount of time. And you can think of it as an emotional or psychological version of acupuncture, because what we do is we stimulate the acupuncture points that are the same places where acupuncturists put their needles. And while anyone who's had acupuncture knows that there are acupuncture points all over your body, we only really work with about 9 of them on the upper body, face and upper body, and some hand points as well. And what we're doing is we're combining exposure, which is you're either in the situation where you're stressed, or you're thinking about the thing that happened that stressed you or made you upset. And at the same time, you're tapping on these points. And so what happens is you create a contrasting or juxtaposing effect. Tapping on these points causes your brain, your sort of inner pharmacy, to produce all these lovely chemicals like serotonin and endorphins that feel really good. So on one hand, you're thinking about this thing that usually makes you feel really bad when you think about it. You feel really stressed or sad or lonely or angry. But at the same time, you're forcing your body to produce these chemicals that we associate with feeling good. There are other effects like brainwave pattern changes and so on. And I could go on later in more detail about the expression of our genes that's actually changed by this, which is amazing, and the latest research is showing. But what we're doing is we're creating this contrasting experience for the body. So the body goes, well, every time I think about that annoying thing that Fred said to me, instead of feeling this surge of anger, I'm getting all these feel-good chemicals in my body. It's not that you're now going to feel good every time you think about the annoying thing Fred said to you. It's that you're going to be able to think about what Fred said, and it's just a fact. You're not going to have an emotional response. There's not going to be actually any triggering. And these acupuncture points, as again, those people who are familiar with acupuncture and know anything about Chinese medicine, they are the sort of the end points or the exit points where the meridians that go through your body that are talked about in Chinese medicine kind of exit the skin. And there's a tool called a galvanometer that I can hand anybody. And you can take this tool and you can touch it to your skin, and you find these places because they have a 4,000 times higher bioelectrical output than the surrounding skin. So it makes this little tool scream and light up when you hit these points. And people who already have tried EFT, have felt the amazing results of it, they're still amazed when they have this tool in their hand and they see these points are real. They really exist. It's not just theory. It's not just me believing in them. No, science actually has a tool that can show that the points you're tapping on are like these like electrical outlets on your body. And then what happens from there as far as sending this, it sends a signal down through the meridian. Well, Western science doesn't really talk about meridians yet, although that is changing. We've recently become aware of a system called the premovascular system, which you can Google. And it's tiny, tiny thread-like structures that go through the body that align almost exactly with these meridians that Chinese medicine talks about. Western science hasn't yet explained or gone into the role of these meridians. All we know is when you tap on these places on your skin where there's a super high electrical output, there are chemical changes observed in the body and brain changes as well, because functional MRIs have now been done on people who have done tapping, showing changes in the brain as a result of tapping directly afterwards.
Well, I think there's also just a vibrational shift in how you feel, because when we're thinking about like shaking something loose in that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even just tapping can immediately, again, change that frequency, bring more of a vibration into, and possibly even push out. I never realized the correlation between EFT and EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm listening to you, I'm recognizing that they have similar effects, and that one is just dealing with eye movement, and then the other one is dealing with these meridians and the tapping. So they're both great tools to use for reducing the effects, especially of any traumas. And like you said, you doesn't mean you're not going to still get annoyed, but you won't be triggered physiologically like you might be without it. And the difference is EFT you can learn to do on your own, and can learn how to catch yourself in different situations and start to use it to bring yourself into a neutral state, hopefully into the state of being an observer, and the observer of the situation, versus being highly emotionally triggered and being a victim in that situation. Before we continue, I just want to say, in case, because even though I do edit my own shows, in case there's any audio that goes in and out, Naomi is coming to us from Australia. And I wanted to say that because I know a lot of you listen to me in Australia. So just in case there's a connection there, she's there, and I know it's not a small place. But Naomi, why don't you tell us the journey of how you and I got connected basically was through another one of the guests on my show, and just a little bit about your background in terms of, like, you used to live in California. I know you said you were in the entertainment industry. How did you get to Australia?
Well, that's what caused my depression. I came here for a guy. Like, I mean, it was partly work, but also a relationship. And I actually moved here, and the relationship disintegrated about, like, as I tell people, it's like as the wheels of the airplane hit the tarmac. With my entire life traveling across the ocean in a container, the relationship fell apart. That's what triggered my my depression, because I felt like the joke of the universe. And but I still sort of was I managed to kind of in some ways transfer at least part of my former career in Los Angeles to Australia. And people would say to me, why don't you just come back to California after this horrible thing happened? You're obviously not meant to be there. And I remember telling people, even in the depths of my depression, I feel like I'm still supposed to be here, and I don't know why, but I'm just going to stay here for now. And the tapping, I'm pretty sure this is the reason, because once I had discovered it, I was just like, it wasn't safe for anybody around me to describe any kind of distress they were going through, because people would like, oh, no, don't say that in front of Naomi. She's going to make you tap. And I just noticed that I was caring more about that than these other projects that I had. And so I had about 6 different television projects fall over in a space of about 2 years. In LA, I probably had 3 fall over in 20 years. 6 in 2 years in Australia. That was the universe telling me, I think, yeah, you're not supposed to do this anymore. Because on the other hand, with the tapping, I was having really amazing results working with people. And that's what I was passionate about. I'd go to a pitch meeting for a television show, and then if somebody in the meeting mentioned like neck pain or something, I just wanted to sort of jump across the table and go, let's tap on that. I was more interested afterwards to know if I could help them with that than what they'd thought of the pitch. So an opportunity came up to get properly trained, and I decided, oh, that'd be kind of fun, just to kind of, see if I've been doing this in any way the right way. I was pretty self-taught, and I took the training, and I mean, halfway through the first day, I just felt like, I think I'm supposed to do this, which was terrifying, because I'd only done one thing for like 25 years. And it wasn't really a career back then, because there was no science behind it. This is when people were thinking, oh, it's the placebo effect, or it's just, giving yourself that attention is taking care of it, or people just, it just feels good to talk about it. So I persevered. I did it anyway. Lots of clients were coming to me, and a lot of people not having heard about tapping before. And then gradually, and I just noticed it in the last couple of years, here in Australia, there's an amazing researcher, Dr. Peter Stapleton, who's a colleague of mine for evidence-based EFT training, which is only for psychologists, doctors, nurses, educators. And also EFT Universe training, which I'm a trainer for, which allows anybody at all, to become trained in this, and possibly, if they want to go on and become a practitioner. And she's here at Bond University in Australia doing amazing research. She's recently done a TED Talk on EFT. And I think it's called the fourth wave of psychology, or something. I can't remember the actual name of it, but because Australia has this presence, anytime PETA does any research, she calls the local radio station and they put her on TV. And so I'm finding in Australia now, I would say 7 out of 10 people, when I mention that I'm an EFT practitioner, say, oh yeah, I've heard of that, or I saw that on TV, or I saw something on the news about that. So yes, we're a huge country actually, but we don't have a lot of people. And but I would say 70% of the people here seem to have heard about tapping, which is very cool. And anyway, after I became properly trained, and the science has been helping me to build a practice, build awareness. Then my next step, I was invited by EFT University to become a trainer. So now I train practitioners, and I do that here in Australia as well as in Southern California.
Okay, so we've established that there is science behind it, which I knew there was, but I didn't, and I knew it was the meridians, the same as used in Chinese medicine. And now, in thinking about the correlation between EMDR, not enough people know about EFT here. And I've heard there's been some books written and programs, pretty famous ones, that have to do with money. And it's interesting because I know I've heard good and bad things about that. But I have had personal experience with EFT, and I think it's one of really the easiest tools that anyone can use at any time. And that's what I really love about it, is when you learn how to do it and you get a rhythm going, it's something that you can do on your own, and you don't have to go to a therapist, and you don't have to, is it helpful to have coaching and to, do it properly? Absolutely. But that's what I love about this technique. It's like having something in your medicine cabinet available to you anytime you need it once you learn how to do it.
What you say is exactly right. It is a self-help tool, but it's also a practitioner-led tool. It depends what you're working on. Major trauma, absolutely not. Don't work on it by yourself. You need a practitioner. And in fact, EFT, there's an S on the end of emotional freedom techniques. It's plural because it's a set of techniques, and there are some techniques called the gentle techniques in that set that are specifically for working with trauma. And the wonderful thing about EFT is that you can gently work on trauma without re-exposing the person to the traumatic, the stuff they don't want to talk about because it's so painful. We can work on that using EFT in a way that allows them to begin working on it without even thinking about it, some of these techniques. And then there's the self-help version of tapping, which, as you say, it's in your self-care toolbox. I think of it as energy hygiene. And the example that I give sometimes, it's like if you go to the dentist and you've never been to the dentist before, there's going to be probably a lot of work that needs to be done. The dentist is going to have to maybe fill some cavities, maybe remove some teeth, and certainly do a very thorough cleaning. But after that, you get handed a toothbrush and some dental floss, and you're told, go home and keep this up. Same way with tapping. When you're just starting out, if you want to work on difficult stuff, if you know that you have trauma, if there's something that you just have a sense that you really shouldn't kind of work on without some help, absolutely go to a properly trained, a certified, if possible, practitioner and get that help. Part of the goal of a properly trained practitioner is to equip you with this tool that you can then take and use for the rest of your life. So I'll give people homework, for example, unless we're working on, like I said, sort of major trauma. When it's appropriate, I'll say, okay, here's what I want you to do for your homework, because I'm teaching someone as they go along. And you'd mentioned the EMDR before. Actually, EMDR and NLP have both been kind of incorporated into EFT. There's a thing called the 9-gamut procedure where you're tapping on this point on the back of your hand while you're doing eye movements, counting, and humming, because you're moving electrical activity around in the brain. And it's also a way to kind of create a juxtaposing experience with exposure and something that you're forcing to happen, which is sort of a neutral or positive experience.
Cool. Interesting. Can we talk about the different points and possibly have people know where they are? I'm not saying that they're going to necessarily do it on their own, but I want them to sort of have this, embody a relationship with how easy this can be.
Absolutely. And people are welcome to do it on their own. Like I said, if it's not major trauma, there are free manuals that you can download online. This is one of the things that that really appealed to me about tapping when I first learned about it, is I thought, if you have this simple tool that we all have access to, it's basically like the lost manual for our human bodies. It's how to shut off the fight or flight response. And if you discover that, wouldn't you want to share that with the world? Why would you turn that into sort of like, something you put up a big giant paywall in front of? So I encourage people, download these free manuals and read and try it yourself. Again, only if it's not major trauma. But the points are the top of the head, and that's sort of not back on the crown, but you really are in the middle. So I tell people it's where the string would come out if you were a marionette. You tap on that point just lightly with your fingers, about 7 times, roughly 5 to 7 times. And the next point is the eyebrow point, which is on the hair of your eyebrow, on the inner end of your eyebrow, the end of your eyebrow that's closest to your nose. And then there's the side of the eye point, which is on the bone beside your eye. It's not back on the temple, on the soft bit, and you're not tapping in so close that you're making yourself blink, but it's right on the bone ridge at the corner of your eye. And then under your eye, again, is on the bone ridge under your eye, directly under the middle of your eye. From there, we go to the under nose point, which is just that space between your upper lip and your nose. That's really easy. And then the chin point is actually the crease of the chin. You're not tapping on your chin, you're tapping on the crease under your mouth, between your mouth and your chin. And then the collarbone point, sometimes a little bit hard to find because it's a bigger area. It's a point just diagonally down about an inch from your collarbone. The two knobs, if you find the two knobs where your collarbone comes together. Another way to just get it easily is take the flat of your hand and just tap at the base of your throat, where your throat meets your chest, tap there. And then there's under the arm, which is about 4 inches below your armpit. Now, I won't go into the finger points. You can find that in a manual, but this is a great way to get started. And I'm happy to do a tapping exercise. We call it the constricted breathing technique that demonstrates for people how this can help just in the simplest way with something like stress, if you want to give that a try for your listeners.
I would love it. And what I'm going to tell everybody is if you're driving, do not do this.
Absolutely.
And make sure you are stationary and focused to do this so you can listen and observe. And then when you're done getting to where you have to go, then play this again and try it while you're seated. Go ahead, Naomi.
That's a really good point, JJ. And I want to say to anybody here that if at all you feel any emotional intensity coming up, because that can happen even when we try to do the most sort of benign tapping, because it tunes you in sometimes before it actually clears things, just ask everybody to make sure that you take care of yourself. And if you need then to go and talk to somebody, get a hold of a practitioner or something, please do so. It shouldn't do this, but if it does, I just want you to know that there are ways that you can reach out to take care of yourself like that. So first, I'd like to ask everybody to begin by taking a deep breath to fill your lungs as full as you can fill them. And then exhale. And then do it again. The idea is to see how full you can fill your lungs. And then exhale. And then a third time. Just making sure that you can fill them as full as possible. And then rate that out of 10. So 10 out of 10 would be my lungs are completely expanded to their fullest capacity with the air that I've inhaled. This isn't science. This is just your interpretation of what that number would be. Does it feel like a 5, 6, 7, 8? What does it feel like? Okay, so you've got that number now. Let's begin. So tapping on the side of the hand and repeating after me. Even though I can only fill my lungs.
Even though I can only feel my lungs.
To this degree.
To this degree.
I accept myself anyway.
I accept myself anyway.
Even though I can only fill my lungs to this number.
Even though I can only fill my lungs to this number.
I accept myself.
I accept myself.
Even though I can only fill my lungs this much.
Even though I can only fill my lungs this much.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
I accept myself deeply and completely.
And then tapping on the top of the head. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
And then tapping on your eyebrow point. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
And then side of the eye. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
And then under the eye. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
Under the nose. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
Under the mouth. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
Collarbone point. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
Under the arm. I can only fill my lungs this much.
I can only fill my lungs this much.
And then take a nice deep breath. And see how much you can fill your lungs this time. And see if it's changed.
I moved from a 7 to an 8.
Great. Excellent. And then you would repeat that. So with EFT, you just keep repeating. So you would do the setup statement again, and you would say at the side of the hand, even though I can only fill my lungs this much, I accept myself anyway, and then go through it again. And you would just keep going until your lungs, you can fill them as much as possible. You can also do this with something that I do when I teach groups, when I introduce this to groups, is the toe touching exercise, where you have people bend over and try to get their best sort of how deep can you go, how low can you go to touch your toes, and then you do a tapping, you do a few rounds of tapping, and then you bend down and see how far, and people are amazed because it's like suddenly they've got an extra 5 inches that they can reach the floor, or things like that. And I mean, of course, this is demonstrating that in terms of taking deep breaths, stress causes us to constrict our breathing. So the effects of tapping, which reduces cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the body, allows us instantly, it relaxes the hold that we have on our lungs, which is why even just doing that allows you to fill your lungs more. But that's just what we use for demonstrations. Of course, tapping can be used on anything that stress is the underlying factor in, which, I mean, it's everything from anxiety, depression, phobias. This works on PTSD. This works for sports performance. You see athletes on TV sometimes. I'll describe what I do, and someone will say, oh, I saw someone do that in the dugout, during that Dodgers game, or something like that. Because there are a lot of EFT practitioners that work with sports teams on sports performance. And the way that we do that, in case anybody noticed, when we're focusing on, I can only fill my lungs to this amount, people might sort of go, well, hang on, that doesn't sound like an affirmation. This is something that's really, really important to get about tapping. Tapping doesn't work with affirmations. Tapping works with what negative is there, because it clears the negative. It's like if you're trying to clear a spot that's on your countertop, you spray the vinegar and water on the spot. And then, so you're focusing on the thing that you want to clear. Tapping is the same way. You focus on what it is that you want to clear. If you're feeling upset, your setup statement would be, even though I'm feeling upset, I accept myself anyway. If you're feeling anxious, you would tap, even though I'm feeling anxious, I accept myself anyway. If you're afraid to get on that airplane, even though I'm scared to get on that airplane, I deeply and completely accept myself. If you're sad because you've just had a breakup and you've driven by the cafe where you guys used to meet and have coffee after work, then when you see that cafe, you tap on the side of the hand, even though I feel so sad right now looking at that cafe where we used to always stop after work, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then setup statement, and then the statement as you tap the points, this feeling of sadness, and then eyebrow, this feeling of sadness, side of the eye, this feeling of sadness, and so on. So we're directing our attention and our tapping at the thing that we want to work on, the thing that we want to clear and collapse. And it's just a really wonderfully affirming. How often do we get told as we're growing up, stop crying, stop feeling that way, cheer up? What tapping says is, no, come and tell me about it. Tell me all about it. Tell me about your pain. Just tap while you're doing it. That's the only difference.
I love that you mentioned the sports, and I love that you mentioned the affirmations, because the whole method of saying I deeply, and I noticed you didn't say it this time, but I worked with one of my former partners on a product. I don't know if you know Adelaide O'Dunton. She has since transitioned and is now one of our angels. But Adelaide would be the one teaching during our program, EFT, and she would use I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And so I don't know if there's different methods and reasons why you would say or not say that, but I do appreciate that you recognize, like you said, it's not about an affirmation, because some people might think, yeah, why am I anchoring in a negative? But to really outline it to say you're clearing the negative, and then you're lessening the charge on that, which by definition is going to decrease the possibility of reactivating that frequency, and therefore you're going to be attracting better things.
Exactly. And we are not, and I'm a big fan of positive thinking and affirmations, but we don't anchor the negative if we're tapping. If we're going around complaining and we're not tapping, yes, we are. We're actually, what that looks like inside the brain is that we are increasing neural pathways and we're growing neural bundles around that particular thought, habituated thinking, and so on. And new research talks about how worry actually increases worry. So with tapping, the rules are different. If you're focusing on the negative while you're tapping, you're actually doing the opposite. You're clearing the neural pathways. You are decreasing the size of the neural bundles that are connected with that particular thought, the emotional responses, the chemical responses in your body that accompany that thought. And those positive affirmations, they really work well with tapping if you first clear the negative. So for example, let's say you want to work on abundance, and you have an affirmation that says, my life is filled with abundance and my career rewards me abundantly. If you say your abundance or any affirmation, and I encourage listeners to just tune into what your favorite affirmation is and see how it feels in your body, and listen for that little kind of heckler at the back of the audience going, that's not true, or that's a load of crap. That actually ends up being what you're affirming. So with tapping, what we do is we use affirmations first to kind of bring those kind of, we call them tail enders, to the surface, the little negative thoughts, and then we tap on those. So you might say, even though even though I experience nothing but scarcity, I deeply and completely accept myself. And by the way, that statement of self-acceptance can be, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, 100% absolutely. I don't start with that because I want to make sure that the statement of self-acceptance is within the bandwidth of whoever I'm working with, if I don't really know them that well yet. And sometimes saying I love myself is something that hasn't arisen in them yet, and it can feel like a bit of a challenge. Sometimes I even have to say with the client, I'm working on it. The client can't even say I accept myself, because that's what they're there to work on. So it can, and with a kid, we're tapping with a child, it might just be, I'm an okay kid. So we really do change the statement of self-acceptance to kind of suit the person. And it's not an affirmation, that statement of self-acceptance. All it is that's an anchoring into, there's me and I'm separate from this thing I'm dealing with. And so when you work with an affirmation, you get rid of the stuff that's kind of cluttering up the affirmation and getting in the way first. When that's clear, when you no longer have any charge on, for example, the abundance thing, you don't have this. As you're tapping, what happens is you go, even though, I'm experiencing nothing but scarcity, after you've done several rounds, you start kind of thinking about ways that you do have abundance that you hadn't really noticed before. This is called a cognitive shift. When you clear the stress and the negativity that's kind of in your brain, in your field, the positive is already there. It's just there waiting. I really believe it's our natural state is to be positive. But then you can use tapping to further enhance that positive statement after you've cleared the negative. So if you want to fill a glass that's full of dirty water with clean, clear water, you dump out the dirty water first, then you can put the clean water in the glass. That's an example that we give for why we focus on the negative first with tapping.
Beautiful. And thank you for that explanation. I'm sure someone would have asked that or was thinking that. And I appreciate you, especially because I run a free 30-day manifestation challenge and we teach a lot about law of attraction. And so some people are very tuned into, again, sort of those positive affirmations, but at the same time, also wanting to express and clear any blocks that they have. And this is a great tool to do that. Now, I know that we've talked about the different points, and thank you for taking us through that exercise that anyone can repeat on themselves, but I'm sure that you've got more, and I know that you've got some videos, and I know you've got a website. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about how people can reach out and learn from you directly, either work with you one-on-one or grab any of your tools or resources that you may have available?
Well, first of all, If you want to take a workshop and learn how to do this over a period of 3 to 4 days, actually, I have a workshop coming up in the middle of July in Southern California in Carlsbad. I still have some space available in that. I'm doing, anybody listening in Australia or New Zealand, I'm doing a 4-day training, the same 4-day training in Australia in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales in November. And I also do this, as I mentioned before, this evidence-based EFT training, which is for existing health and educational professionals. This training was created by Dr. Peter Stapleton, and I do that periodically. I've got one. Actually, tomorrow I start one here in Australia. Too late for that one, but on my website, which is www.ozfreedomtechniques.com, you can look on my training page, and if you're a psychologist or a doctor, a nurse, or a school teacher or something, and you want it to be notified of when I do my next evidence-based training, you can just give me your name and get on a list there, and I'll let you know. As far as one-on-one training, I work with people individually. You can go on my website, and there's a form, a pop-up that allows you to book a free 15-minute consult, because I always like to talk to people first and just make sure that EFT is the appropriate intervention for them, and get a sense of what they want to work on. And I have numerous programs, different ways to work with me on that. And I also have free resources on my website. You can download a manual on my website. And for your listeners, I've just actually finished writing and co-producing a documentary called The Science of Tapping. It's a 30-minute documentary. And Joe Dispenza's in it. JJ, I think you're a fan of Joe Dispenza. I think we've talked about it in the past. Yeah. He's in it. A lot of luminaries are who are fans of tapping are in this film, and we talk about the science, the latest research, and so on. And if any listeners get in touch with me and mention this podcast, I will give you a special private link that you can go on my website and watch this film. If you're interested in the science of tapping. And as I also tell people, anywhere you are in the world, if you can get enough people together, I will come and do a training for you, because I want to help spread this. I train more and more psychologists and doctors all the time, and they're taking it to places where there have been large-scale traumas, and into populations that they work with, whether it's a prison population or a population that's where they're dealing with addictions. And I want to do my part to get this tool into the hands of the people that need it. And having said that, I think everybody needs this tool. This is like a toothbrush and dental floss for the rest of us, That's something that we can use absolutely every day. So I'm doing my part to try to make it as accessible as possible, and my website lists a lot of those ways.
All right, so that's Oz, like she's in Australia, okay, Ozzy. OzFreedomTechniques.com. Again, OzFreedomTechniques.com. Lots of things to consider, and definitely have take a minute to go look at the website and download the guidebook, and that way you can start practicing on yourself right now. I mean, there's no reason why you can't do it today on yourself. You can go back and listen to what we did if you were driving and do it on yourself, and change it up if it's just the breathing. You can do it for other things. And but you do want to learn more about the benefits and the specificity of using it. And Naomi is definitely one of those people who is an expert to learn from. And Naomi, also, I noticed that you have a podcast as well.
Yes, my podcast, and it's the One Mind Live. I have a tapping and meditation website called onemindlive.com. And JJ, you were a meditation guide for us about, what was that? It was about a year ago, I think, maybe a year and a half, something
More
like
like
that.
2, probably, actually.
2 years. Oh my
More
goodness,
like 2 years
time
ago.
flies. Oh my goodness. We recently opened the doors and put our entire archive of One Mind Live meditation and tapping podcasts, made it available for people to just access, open access. So if you go to onemindlive.com, you will have a wealth of tapping and and guided meditations. And yours was really wonderful. You did 4 with us, JJ, and we're adding to our listening room all the time, just as fast as we can kind of get the uploads happening. But there's already a large number of them for open access. So I encourage people to go there, and there's a lot of guided tapping that they can access there, as well as guided meditations and original music with my partner, Stephen Fernley, who's the composer, and just wrote absolutely beautiful, such a wealth of beautiful music, specially designed to enhance tapping and meditation.
Yeah, we did some great work there. And so everyone check out onemindlive.com as well. And both of these links will be in the show notes. So make sure to check them out and to be in touch with Naomi. And actually, Naomi, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I have someone I want to refer to you. So I will do the email connection for a private session for someone who very specifically needs some high-level sports psychology, mindset, releasing fears and training. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect, because we were just talking about the different methodologies, and EFT had not come into my mind. So I'm really glad that you used that sports analogy because this technique is going to be good forever. And it's not just it's not going to take 6 sessions to figure out how to use it and get benefit from it. It'll get benefit immediately with 1 session. So I want to definitely share this. So thank you so much. And I'm really glad I could have you on my show finally. And I hope everyone's going to check out both of your websites.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you so much for having me and for the opportunity to let lots more people know about this amazing modality.